looked at your grandparents and thought of how they lived their life when they were younger? Do you look forward to becoming old, or are you afraid of what may lie ahead?
Did you know that the populations of older adults in industrialized nations had been increasing rapidly in the 20th century? Demographers study population trends and use population pyramids to illustrate the changes. Their research predicts that in the year 2030, the number of people over 65 will equal the number in the other age groups. The general population of the United States is changing rapidly. By 2044, it is expected that the US will become majority-minority, up from 38% in 2014. Older adults in the future will be better educated too. By 2030, it is estimated that 85% will have a high school diploma and about 75% will have a college degree. Better educated people tend to live longer, mostly because they have higher incomes, which give them better access to good healthcare and a chance to follow a healthier lifestyle. How long we live depends on complex interaction among biological, psychological, socioeconomic, and life cycle forces. How long you live, called longevity, is generally determined by genetic and environmental factors. Researchers distinguish between two different types of longevity: average longevity and maximum longevity. Average longevity is commonly called average life expectancy and refers to the age at which half of the individuals who are born in a particular year will have died. Average longevity is affected by both genetic and environmental factors. Maximum longevity is the oldest age to which any individual of a species lives. You know that if you came from a family with a history of long-lived individuals, you are most likely to live longer as well? Research indicates that about 25% of the variation in human longevity is due to a person's genetic. Environmental factors also affect the lifespan, often in combination with genes. Diseases, such as cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease, and lifestyle issues, such as smoking and exercise, receive a great deal of attention from researchers. So if you live in an unhealthy environment, your dream of living old is at stake. Living in poverty shortens longevity. The impact of socioeconomic status on longevity results from reduced access to medical care and healthy food that characterizes certain ethnic minority groups, the poor, and many older adults. As clearly demonstrated in a very large study of premature mortality in community-dwelling adults. Life expectancy is complex and varies among ethnic groups. European American is longer than that of African America, but not as long as Hispanic American. We are talking about life expectancy, and life expectancy varies in different ages. I hate these loud chicken. Women live longer than men by 7 years. For those who live to 85, the difference is only 1 year. Men are more susceptible to infectious diseases that can be fatal. Despite these patterns, no one really knows for certain why women tend to live longer. Ha ha ha, sorry boys. International differences in average longevity. The current range extends from 71.7 years in Mexico to over 82 years in Japan. In contrast, some developing countries, such as Sierra Leone in Africa, have an average longevity at birth of less than 40 years. Wide divergence in life expectancy reflects vast discrepancies in genetic, sociocultural and economic conditions, healthcare, disease, and the like across industrialized and developing nations. Third age adult are between 60 to 80. Many advances in technology and have contributed to the better quality of life for these individuals. Fourth age adult are over 80. Few interventions have been developed to hold back cognitive and physiological declines in this group. Biological theories of aging. Much research on aging has focused on answering the question of why people and other living organisms grow old and die. With regard to human aging, 3 groups of theories have provided the most insights. Metabolic theories. Theory of aging that makes apparent common sense postulates that organisms have only so much energy to expend in a lifetime. Couch potatoes might like this theory, and may use it as a reason why they are not physically active.
The basic idea is that the rate of a creature's metabolism is related to how long it lives. Cellular theories. Excuse me, I swear to God, these chickens. Going back to the cellular theory. One notion focuses on the number of times cells can divide, which presumably limits the lifespan of a complex organism. What causes cells to limit their number of divisions? Evidence suggests that the tips of the chromosomes, called telomeres, play a major role in aging by adjusting the cell's response to stress and growth stimulation based on cell divisions and DNA damage, and by typically shortening with each cell replication. An enzyme called telomerase is needed in DNA replication to fully reproduce the telomeres when cells divide. A second type of cellular theory proposes that aging is caused by unstable molecules called free radicals, which are highly reactive chemicals produced randomly in normal metabolism. When these free radicals interact with nearby molecules, problems may result. For example, free radicals may cause cell damage to the heart by changing the oxygen levels in cells. Genetic programming theories. Programmed cell death appears to be a function of physiological processes, the innate ability of cells to self-destruct, and the ability of dying cells to trigger key processes in other cells, all of which are also thought to be influenced by external environmental factors. Neuroscience research indicates that the most important normative changes with age involve structural changes in the neurons, the basic cells in the brain, and in how they communicate. The neuron's ability to transmit information, which ultimately affects how well the person functions. For reasons that are not understood, fibers that compose the axon sometimes become twisted together to form spiral-shaped masses called neurofibrillary tangles. These tangles interfere with the neuron's ability to transmit information down the axon. This is often seen in people with dementia and Alzheimer's. Research indicates that dendrites continue to grow in some areas of the brain. And embryonic stem cell research indicates that inducing growth may be a future way to treat brain disease and injury. This may help explain why older adults continue to improve in some areas, as we will discover later in this chapter. Why some dendrites degenerate and others do not is poorly understood. It may reflect the existence of two different families of neurons. Neuritic or amyloid plaques are spherical structures consisting of a core of beta-amyloid, a protein, surrounded by degenerated fragments of dying or dead neurons. Some researchers view concentration of beta-amyloid as a biomarker of Alzheimer's disease. Others consider it an early warning of potential cognitive decline, even in the absence of any behavioral symptoms. Neurons do not physically touch each other, they must communicate via chemicals called neurotransmitters. With age, the levels of these neurotransmitters decline. Because all of these changes in neurons are a normal part of aging, it is difficult to say precisely how they may also cause cognitive and other diseases late in life. And the chickens is starting to damage my neurons with their noise while recording this. This point is important because it means that serious behavioral changes, for example, severe memory impairment, are not a result of normative age changes in the brain. Rather, they are indicators of disease. Neuroimaging is an important tool for understanding both normal and abnormal cognitive aging. Two neuroimaging techniques are used most often. Number 1. Structural neuroimaging provides highly detailed images of anatomical features in the brain. Structural neuroimaging is usually effective at identifying such things as bone fractures, tumors, and other conditions that cause structural damage in the brain, such as strokes. Number 2. Functional neuroimaging provides an indication of brain activity, but not high anatomical detail. Functional neuroimaging provides researchers with information about what parts of the brain are active when people are doing specific tasks. You may already know that cardiovascular disease is the most common cause of death in the United States. However, the overall death rates from these diseases have been declining over recent decades, mainly because fewer adults smoke cigarettes and many people have reduced the amount of fat in their diets. Two important age-related changes occur in the circulatory system. First, the walls of the arteries stiffen due to calcification of the arterial walls and by replacement of elastic fibers with less elastic ones. Second, fat deposits in the arteries can create blockages that restrict blood flow and may result in a myocardial infarction, heart attack. Calcification and blockages in the arteries cause a disease of atherosclerosis. As people grow older, their chances of having a stroke increase. Strokes, or cerebral vascular accidents, CVAs, are caused by interruptions in the blood flow in the brain due to blockage or a hemorrhage in a cerebral artery. Older adults often experience transient ischemic attacks, TIAs, which involve an interruption of blood flow to the brain and are often early warning signs of stroke. Recovery from a single stroke depends on many factors, including the extent and type of the loss, the ability of other areas in the brain to assume the functions that were lost, and personal motivation. Cataracts often are treated by surgical removal and replacement of the lenses. Second, the fluid in the eye may not drain properly, causing very high internal pressure. This condition, called glaucoma, can cause internome damage and loss of vision. Sensory changes, a decrease in the amount of light admitted to the eyes results in the need for increased light for reading. Opaque spots called cataracts may develop on the lens, which limits the amount of light transmitted. Age-related macular degeneration involves the progressive and irreversible destruction of receptors from any of a number of causes. This disease results in the loss of the ability to see details. A second age-related retinal disease is a byproduct of diabetes. Diabetic retinopathy, as this condition is called, can involve fluid retention in the macula, detachment of the retina, hemorrhage, and aneurysms. Nearly half of adults in the United States have a chronic health condition. One is the disease diabetes mellitus occurs when the pancreas produces insufficient insulin. The primary characteristic of diabetes mellitus is above normal sugar in the blood and urine caused by problems in metabolizing carbohydrates. There are two general types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes usually develops earlier in life and requires the use of insulin. Hence, it is sometimes called insulin-dependent diabetes. Type 2 diabetes typically develops in adulthood and is often effectively managed through diet. It is common among older adults and members of minority groups. Taking the appropriate steps to avoid diabetes in the first place is the best strategy, of course. So monitoring diet and weight are important aspects of an overall wellness-based lifestyle. Cancer is the second leading cause of death in the United States, behind cardiovascular disease. Many current deaths caused by cancer are preventable. Stopping smoking, limiting exposure to the sun's ultraviolet rays, and eating a healthy diet can prevent many cancers. Nearly every aspect of sleep undergoes age-related changes. It takes older adults longer to fall asleep. They are awake more at night, and they are more easily awakened. Older adults experience major shifts in their sleep-wake cycles, called circadian rhythms. These changes are related to the changes in regulating core body temperature. Among the most effective treatments of sleep problems are increasing physical exercise, reducing caffeine intake, avoiding daytime naps, and making sure that the sleeping environment is as quiet and dark as possible. To stay maximally healthy, though, we must recognize that nutritional requirements and eating habits change across the lifespan. This change is due mainly to differences in, or how much energy the body needs, termed metabolism. Body metabolism and the digestive process slow down with age.